Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and on today's show we're going to be upgrading the front end of my 2017 PX2 Ford Ranger. It's pretty plain looking, as you can see, so we'll be going from this to this. Alright, it's the Hustler bar from Aussie 4-Wheel Drives. Been waiting a while. It's the second generation. They've upgraded the LED lights. The mounting for the winch is a lot stronger apparently. It's compatible with your tech system. And overall just looks like a great bar. No instructions come with it, so today's video will show you how to go about installing it. So stick around. Okay, here's all the components that come with the Hustler bar. It comes pretty well protected on a pallet. It's all wrapped up nice and neat. So there's the Hustler bar, 3mm plate steel, powder coated, skid plate, the main mount to your front end of the chassis, nuts, bolts, LED lights, bracketry, the shroud for your LED lights, some more guarding, and we'll go through that in this video and show you step by step. Alright, so from here, let's get into it. Here's most of the tools that I use to install the bar with, noting I've got a multi-tool there. If you've got an angle grinder, that will do the same job as well. And here's some of the components that you won't need for this install on the PX2. We'll talk about those later. Before we can install the bar, we have to pull a few pieces off the truck to start with. So in this case, we'll start with the LED bar and its mount. Next photo, it's removed, and we're going to use that light again, so we'll just put it in a safe spot and we'll come back to it later. Using your trim removal tool, there's 5 plastic pins that you need to pull out in order to remove the this shroud between the radiator and the front grille of the car. If you haven't got a trim removal tool, you can use a screwdriver, but I did find this set at Sydney Tools for about $20, and yeah, all the plastic bits and pieces in there that you need for fenders and so forth are really good. With the plastic retaining clips removed and put in a safe spot for later on, you need to then lift up that radiator shroud. Be careful with those tabs on the retaining clips. You just push those in and the whole shroud will come out easily, and then put it down with the rest of your parts and we'll continue on. Next we're going to remove the plastic radiator grille, and it's held in place with a couple of 6mm bolts, 2 top, 2 bottom, and a couple of plastic tabs. You'll need a 10mm socket to remove this, and also the ones down the bottom located there. You'll also need an extension to make the job easier to get those out. So remove those, and from there we'll go around to the side underneath the fender and remove the plastic trim tabs there using our handy tool, and also there's a bolt there as well. Need the 8mm tool. We've just about got the front off the truck now. Just under each side of the front there's 3 bolts that you need to remove. I think they're a 10mm socket, and then from there we can get the fender off the front of the truck. So we need to disengage these tabs here. So to do that, you grab the side of the fender here and just pull that forward, and it should disengage quite easily. As you're removing the front of the truck, just remember you've got the wiring there for the fog lights on both sides, and also the wiring for the sensor pack. So disconnecting those, remove the whole front of the truck and put to the side, as we'll need to come back to that later. By now your truck should look something like this. So from here we're going to remove those brackets that the front fender locked into, tilt one either side, and also the hanging brackets that the underside of the guard are bolted onto. The air shrouds that can be removed as well, and in particular the right hand one, so we can remove the radar unit that's there. So unbolt the radar unit and disconnect the electrical lead and put that in a safe spot, as we'll need it later on. This lower spoiler will just pull away if you put enough force on it, or you can use your trim tool to remove those plugs and remove that from the front bar assembly. So from there, all those pieces that were removed we'll put with the rest of our parts, and we'll use some of those later on. This bar assembly is next to be removed. So these bolts are a bit of a weird size. They're around about a 15mm across the flats bolt head, so I ended up using an imperial socket. So there's 4, I think there's 4 across the front, and there's a couple underneath which hold the bash plate on. So remove those, and then we're up to the next step of removing the bash plate. There's 2 more at the rear, and put those aside. This is the FM antenna for the radio, so it needs to be repositioned. So I just use a knife to get it off that plastic guard, being careful, of course, of the wiring for it. So a good spot for it is going to be back on this air shroud. So mark the position it needed to go, and there's a hole we need to drill in the top. The bottom hole, we can just use a trim plug, and that'll hold that in place. And I've also used some double-sided tape just to hold it in position. Connected the wiring back up, made it all nice and neat, and that works fine in that position. Okay, if you followed me so far, we're now up to the install mode. So here's all the nuts and bolts laid out in the various sizes, which is a good idea to help with the installation process, which we're about to go on to now. Here's the first component to go on, and that's the cradle. So it mounts onto the existing chassis, and we're reusing the bolts that we took off previously. So put it on and do those up securely. And then the next, on the rear side of that cradle, are these mounting brackets. Now they're sort of like an inner and outer brackets. They're angled, and there's only really a particular way that they go. So the bolts we use for those are these M10 bolts here. This here is the right-hand outer bracket and shows you how it all goes together. Don't forget there's a couple of bolts that go through the top, locking the cradle into the mounting bracket, and also a long bolt which goes through the chassis as well. And that bolt is these ones identified here in the picture. With all the brackets and bolts in place and you're happy with the alignment of the cradle on the chassis, go ahead and tighten those bolts up. The next step I took was to fit the bar to the cradle, but in hindsight, you're better off mounting the radar to the bull bar before fitting it. So the actual mount that comes with the kit isn't really compatible with the PX2 radar unit. There's no holes drilled and just doesn't make sense at all. So in hindsight, there's probably a bit of work you can do before putting the bar on. So first step is we're going to look at the tech pack. So separate the radar unit from the cradle, the factory cradle. It'll actually just pull off quite easily from those mounting brackets. From there, work out exactly where you want to have it on the bar, and then you can drill the holes. It's much easier with the bar to drill the holes in the bar off the vehicle than actually on the vehicle. Normally the radar unit on the vehicle has that extra protection of the front guard, but in this case I've used some core flute material just to give it a bit of extra protection from anything that might hit the front of the bar. And you can also use Celastic or Sikaflex body glue to help hold that in position as well. Right, back to the installation of the main bar. So this case we're going to use the M12 bolts here to secure the bar to the actual cradle, as you can see in the picture, and that's how it looks from the left hand side of the vehicle as well. You'll find these bars in your kit, however, they don't really fit anything. I contacted the guys at Aussie 4-Wheel Drive and they said that in most cases they don't use them either. They are supposed to go somehow from the side of the bar, tie back into the chassis, but in the PX2 case they just didn't fit, so I've opted to leave them off. With the bar on, it's time to trim up the wheel arches, so I've marked it out with a bit of white paint pen, then used the multi-tool with that blade on it just to cut those plastic guards. Try and do it neat as possible, both the right and left hand side. Whilst I've got the tool, those air shrouds also need to be modified as well to allow the LED lights to be installed as well. These lower shrouds are just hanging down. You could probably even remove them, but I just left them in place. I just swung them up into the horizontal position, and the skid plate holds them in place later on. Here's another job that you can do either with the bar fitted or before putting the bar on, is the wiring harness for the sensors. So just carefully unclip those from the old front of the car, and also pop out the sensor units. There are a couple of pieces, make those up. From there you'll be able to find places under the bar to clip that harness onto, and that holds it securely in place. And there's from there just run all your wiring out through the front of the bar, and of course might have to do a bit of a touch up with the paint can on those sensors as well. The holes provided on the top of the bar for LED light bar didn't quite line up with the bar that I had, so it's time to get the drill out and add a few of my own, and there's the finished bar. I had to muck around with the brackets a bit later on, but anyway, yeah, drill as required. Our next task is to install the LED lights that come with the bar. So there's all the bits and pieces. Noting that the plugs on the LED lights didn't fit the harness, the wiring harness of the PX2. So I had to hardwire those in. The nuts and bolts there, just sort through those because there are different types of heads. So there's the Phillips heads, which you'll need to actually mount the LED light to those plastic covers that go onto the bar. And there's a picture there of those heads. Wiring the fog lights is pretty straightforward. Red to the brown wire and black to the, I think it had a black with a white stripe on it. So I soldered those and then wrapped them up electrical tape, and then it looked pretty neat job at the end of it, and they just plug straight into the back of the LED lights. Same sort of technique for the indicators. We don't have to cut the plug off. We're just going to pull the cable out a bit, tap into it, solder a cable on. In this case, I've used yellow for the indicators. And there's the colours for the right-hand side. Looking for a blue cable with the yellow stripe. And on the left-hand indicator, it's the blue wire with the green stripe. Once again, solder, insulate, tie it all back up with a bit of insulation tape for a nice, neat job. It's the same splicing technique that I've used for the Parker. So locate the parking bulb, splice into the cable. You're looking for like a yellowish white wire, and that's the same for both the left and right hand side of the vehicle. Once done that, tape it all up nice and neat. With your wiring done, it's time to hook them into the LED light. So the yellow wire that I've used, I've plugged in to the blue wire on the LED light for the indicators, and the grey wire I've used will plug into the green wire for the Parkers. Once you've done that, just tidy up all your cabling, making sure it's all zip tied out of the way. You can hook up your radar as well, and also your sensors, plug those all back together, and just keep it all nice and tidy with zip ties, and you shouldn't have any problems at all with loose wiring. Now we're getting to the back end of the installation, so it's time to separate the radiator grille from the front end of the car that we took off. And then I've used tape here, masking tape, just to give me a line that we need to cut to. So using the trusty multi-tool, I've run along there and just used a file to clean off any loose edges. So because we've put all the wiring harness and everything in place, we can now fit the grille to the vehicle. As I don't have a winch for the truck or intend to put one on there, I've just made up this blanking plate out of 3mm steel to put the number plate on, and it just bolts into the bar, and there's the finished product like that, nice and neat. Only a couple of pieces to go. We are so close. So in this one, we need to install these pieces which go between the lights and the bar. So I've just put a bit of a bend on them, putting them over my leg, bit of pressure just to get a nice curve, and just so they fit neater underneath those lights there. So this is where we're up to. We're looking pretty awesome at the moment. So next we're going to fit these little guards that go up underneath the bar, and here's the socket-headed cap screws that we use to hold them in place. Once you work out the left and right hand side with these guards, the long tab there just bolts up onto the underside of the cradle. The bash plates next to go on, so we use the socket-headed cap screws at the front there, and they can be accessed from down between the radiator grille and the radiator there as shown, and then at the rear we use the bolts that we took off the car to secure the bash plate up underneath the transmission. One last job with the fenders, and that's to put a hole through the wheel arch and secure that to the side of our Hustler bar. This is it, last job. So all we've got to do is now fit the radiator top shroud, and there we are. The job is complete. Thanks for watching today's installation video, and disappointed with the weight I had to get my hands on one of these bars, but I'm very impressed with the transformation that it's made to the Project Adventure Ranger truck. So no affiliation with Aussie 4x4, purchased out of my own wallet, and also there's no other affiliation with any other companies in this video. Just thought I'd help you out to save you a bit of time. So overall, installation time should take you around about 4 hours with the tips and the sequence of events that I've given you in this video. So once again, thanks again for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, if you want to, whatever. Okay, that's all for now. I'll see you on another great video that I put together for Project Adventure Ranger. Okay, thanks for watching. Ciao.